Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We're so happy that you are here with us this evening and you're starting your week right here in the right place with Mental Health Mondays, just learning about your mental health and how you can improve that or just getting education about mental health. So we're just so thrilled that you are here, Dr. Whyte and myself. Always good to see you, Dr. Whyte.
Good to see you as well, Sister Atonte.
Yes, and our dear friend Clint was so kind to let us know that he would not be here live with us. We will miss you live, Clint, but he said he'll watch the replay. So
It just
faithful.
won't be the same.
Clint, it's like you're the third co-host, so we're gonna miss you live, but we're thankful that you are that you love Mental Health Monday so much that you that you came by and let us know that why you would not why, but that you wouldn't be here live, and so we're thankful.
So he was still first. He's still registered. He still won the first
That's
top
still
spot.
one of the first, yes. We
Oh
want
my
to
goodness.
welcome all of you. We want to hear from all of you. Let us know where you're viewing from so we can say a special welcome to you. But this is, again, Mental Health Mondays. And tonight we are going to be talking about the topic of depression.
Absolutely.
Yes, the thing that affects every single human being at some point in their life.
Yeah,
It
it's
affects.
estimated that about 8.4 adults in the United States are affected by depression, and that translates to about 21 million Americans. Um, Even more alarming than that, whereas it's
Mhm.
8.4 for adults, it's about 17% for those in the age range of 12 to 17. So this is a great topic for us to talk about.
It
Uh,
really is.
I know, I know a lot of us, when we hear depression, the first thought is, oh, it's a serotonin deficiency.
Right.
But there's so much more, and that's what we're going to cover this
Well,
evening.
that's funny, Dr.
Yeah.
White. You say that most of us think, oh, it's a serotonin deficiency. Like I think those who are in the field probably think about serotonin, but I think the
Mhm.
average American or person probably is not even thinking about serotonin, and they may not even know what that is. But we're going to go deeper into it. That it's even deeper than that and much more than that. So yes,
Absolutely.
want to welcome again Veronica. She's in Washington State. Please put in the chat where you are watching from. But thank you, Veronica. Always good to see you here from the beautiful state of Washington.
Washington.
Yes,
Absolutely.
so beautiful the state is. So, so beautiful. But yes, we want to take a deeper dive into depression.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's definitely other factors that can or reasons why we experience depression. There's biological factors. And Dr. White, you want to help us understand what that means. Biological factors that can
Okay,
cause.
absolutely. So the first thing we can talk about is genetics. So
Mhm.
we, by now, a number of us know about, the DNA molecule and the genes that will actually provide the instruction for who it is that we are. Well, that instruction, of course, we can inherit. We can inherit genes from our family members that can then predispose us to depression. I think some may say, well, why can genes predispose me to depression? How does that work?
Mhm.
Well, if I simplify the model for depression and we just call depression a serotonin deficiency, for example, what we're really talking about is a neuron creating serotonin, it leaving that neuron, going into that space between the two neurons that we call the synaptic cleft, then interacting with a receptor on that other neuron. And then signals need to be transmitted as a way of, let's say, protecting you from depression.
Hmm.
Well, everything that I just described is instructed by genes. And
Mhm.
those genes will actually instruct the production of proteins that then produce everything I just described. So, all along that path, if there's any process in which a protein is produced that interrupts that ability, that's where you could theoretically see a problem with depression. So oversimplified it, but it's to really help us understand how genes can contribute. And sometimes you see a family of people who all are suffering from depression, and it's not like we can get a chance to see what the genetic deficiency might be or the genetic mutation, but
Mhm.
it points to there being some kind of genetic thing that is contributing to that family having depression. So the
Right.
bottom line is we want you to understand that there's a diversity of things that can contribute to depression, just one of those categories being genetics.
Yes, just one. We have a great question. And before we go there, I want to just remind the audience that you are a part of the program, meaning you can ask your questions and send comments. So please send your questions and comments about this evening's topic about depression. But we have a question. Can you define clinical depression versus circumstantial depression?
So that's really good, Veronica, and I'm going to keep it simple. So, when we're talking about depression, the actual clinical term is major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
And that word disorder is really important because what it's really talking about is it's a change from your baseline level of function. And so with a disorder, it is disrupting your capacity to function. So
Mhm.
sometimes the disruption is mild, but other times it can be very severe. So
Mhm.
now when it's time now for us to distinguish clinical depression versus situational depression, there's a book, it's right next to me, that's called this is the
The
DSM-5.
Yeah, you have it upside down, but it's the DSM-5, which I like to say is
Oh,
the
place for
Bible,
book.
the Bible, or maybe, yeah, the Bible of mental health disorders with, the different criteria to what's good about the DSM-5 is it does again list the criteria that needs to be there for a person to actually have here in society, we like to throw mental health terms around. We'd like to label people with different mental health issues that don't even have um, all the criteria to meet that disorder, which can be problematic.
Well, exactly. The aim of the book is that as you know, as experts, as clinicians, even
Mhm.
insurance companies and
Mhm.
reimbursement companies, we can all be kind of speaking the same language.
Right.
Even the people that are conducting research, well, we can all sort of be on the same page. But Veronica, to get at your question, it's a matter of this. What's the level of disorder? So with major depressive disorder, sometimes severe or what have you, there is a specific criteria
Mhm.
outlined in that DSM-5 now
Mhm.
that outlines the criteria that needs to be met in order for a person to get clinically diagnosed with depression. Um, and and it's very specific. So for 2 weeks, for a minimum of 2 weeks, there's a symptom cluster that has been present, so
Mhm.
whether depressed mood or loss of interest in things you normally enjoy, change in sleep, change in appetite,
Right.
sometimes change in weight, preponderance of suicidal thinking,
Mhm.
or thoughts of death and dying. So there's this clinical criteria that needs to be met in order to meet criteria for major depressive disorder. And there are rule outs also. It can't be because of a medical condition,
Right.
or it can't be, so efforts are made to isolate it from things just being situational.
Right, like
Um,
grief, like if you're grieving a loss of a loved one, that would not be considered major depressive disorder.
Right, because there's a period, there's a duration for the
Mhm.
symptoms to last for you to say, okay, well, if it's within this time frame, it could be grieving. But now, if it's going beyond that time frame, and
Right.
again, you're looking at function. the disruption of the person's ability to function in their normal life, that's when you start saying, okay, well, now this is something a bit more clinically concerning, and now we would like to get some professionals involved so that we can better address and deal with the issue.
Right.
So now Deborah's asking, everyone suffers depression at some point in their life. Is this true? And at what point can one seek help? All right. So not everyone suffers clinical,
Right.
depression in terms of major depressive, disorder. Everyone
Yeah.
experiences sadness.
Yeah.
Everyone experiences moments of letdown. But that doesn't mean you can't get out of bed for 10 days or, a month straight and you're not attending
Mhm.
to your activities of daily living, you're not brushing your teeth, you're not going to work, you're not functioning in your family system. So it's that degree of dysfunction that determines when it is you actually need help. And just because you're sad, it doesn't mean you're thinking about harming yourself or you've lost
Mhm.
all purpose for living. So
Mhm.
the key point I want to drive home is level of functionality and change from baseline. When you can observe that change, that's what should alert us. And then duration and severity are things that we're talking about.
I
All
also
right.
want to add Deborah to Deborah's question because she said, when should someone get help? So even though if at any time you can reach out to a mental health professional or therapist, even if it's for situational sadness for a short amount of time, you could still like it doesn't have to be clinical depression where you're going through the things that Dr. White just listed. I mean, you could just be feeling sad about you fill in the blank, but you're not experiencing to the level of what, again, Dr. White just described. But you just need to talk to someone, and so you can do that at any time. I think some people think like, oh, well, I'm not that severe, but it can be good to just again talk to a mental health professional, get a perspective change on some things, and just start to look at things a little bit differently.
No, absolutely. Okay, so then Veronica said, did DSM-5 update at the same time Medicare switched to ICD-10? In other words, have they added significant number of codes? Um, I'm not sure, Veronica, as far as the timeline for, DSM and ICD-10. My hunch is that I recall hearing about ICD-10 right around the time that DSM-5 had been published. So, but I cannot give you the specific dates right this
Mhm,
instant. Have they added a significant number of codes? Yeah, a coder could answer that question. All
mhm.
right, now, and then of course we see Denise kind of asking us a question about depression related to hormones, really, and menopause. So we're actually going to come to that as we continue in the discussion. But Atante, keep me honest and make sure I come back to that question.
Denise's
Um,
question. Okay.
yeah, so we're talking about the biological contributors. First, we talked about genetics. Next, we're going to go to the brain chemistry. So you recall I mentioned serotonin. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter that occurs in the neurons, and it plays a role in hormones. In the early studies, what they found was in the animal models that had deficiency in serotonin, those animals appeared more depressed. How do you determine if a rat's depressed? Well, but the bottom line is they saw behavior that they coded as depression. Also, when they administered medications that interfered with serotonin basically doing its job, again, they saw behavior that suggested depression. And so this serotonin theory, it's what kind of made us think that serotonin plays this important role in depression. What I don't know is as well understood or is as well known is that dopamine is a neurotransmitter that also plays a role in depression when it's not regulated. Dopamine is also, dopamine, you'll recall, is the neurotransmitter that plays a huge role in us experiencing joy,
Mhm.
and it having a very, very prominent role in the reward pathway. When we talk about addictions, it's also said to play a role in focus, and when it's depleted, it can also play a role in depression. So you may be aware of the drug methamphetamine and cocaine, and one of the things that they are notorious for doing is depleting dopamine. And this is why when folk that are coming in from having used methamphetamines, having used cocaine, and they come onto the unit, a lot of times they are very irritable. They feel depressed. They feel hopeless, and they're eating. And they want to sleep because they're exhausted, and they're just waking up to eat, take bathroom breaks, and then get right back to sleeping. And in between that, when they're up, they're super agitated. And again, part of that is because of the deficiency of dopamine. But that deficiency in dopamine can also contribute to depression.
Mhm.
And then the third one is norepinephrine. So norepinephrine is viewed as far as our mental state, it plays an important role in focus and attention. And so imbalance in norepinephrine is also connected to depression as well. So it's not just one neurotransmitter. Quite a number of the neurotransmitters can be altered and thereby play a role in depression. So I think that's kind of interesting, personally. All right. So we
Yeah,
have, let's see,
yeah.
Sean P5891.
I think
Love
it's
it,
Shan.
Sean.
I think it's Shan.
Welcome to Mental Health Monday, Cheyenne. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a counselor and I thought I was feeling better. I just want to feel normal. And I feel like that's not going to happen. That's an interesting,
Yeah.
experience. You want to take the first stab at
Well,
that,
yeah,
counselor?
I'm sorry, and I think it's Shan, so I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your
Sorry, Shan.
name right, but, I'm sorry that you're feeling that way, and there's many factors, that could be going into the fact that you're seeing a therapist, but you're not feeling better. And I don't know enough about the situation. But if you feel like the therapist possibly is not a good fit, you could always, you know, start looking for another therapist that may help. There's nothing wrong with switching therapists. Not every therapist fits everyone, and maybe the approach the therapist is taking is not, it might be the issue. I'm not sure. It could be a host of things. But I wouldn't give up on therapy. I would not give up on therapy because a therapist is here to help you. And again, not all therapists fit with everyone. And again, it could be the approach or the way that the therapist is coming at your situation. But I would definitely take a deeper look into looking to someone that would fit you better. There's so many things that could come into play with why you're not feeling well or not feeling happy. A lot of times there's unresolved trauma that could be a part of a reason why a person is not effectively doing well in therapy. And I always suggest to people, if there is trauma there, that I would get a therapist who is highly educated in dealing with trauma or specializes in trauma, because that could make all the difference in the world. And I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea your situation, but I just
This,
want
this
to
is why we
encourage.
always This is why we always caution, we're not your mental health
No, no, we're
therapist because we
not.
don't know your specific situation. And this statement is not going to be specifically for Shan, especially since I just don't know the situation.
Right,
But I will say when I'm working with clients, one of the things that I encourage is please don't wait for the good feeling
right,
to kind of get back to life. um because, so for example, if you commit to, let's say, taking a walk, nobody, and I mean nobody, feels good at the start of the walk. Obviously, I'm saying that facetiously because there are mornings where I'm starting to walk and I'm excited, but I'm just making a little point. You're
Right.
getting out of bed. You'd rather stay another 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's nice and warm. No, it's not. Typically speaking, at the start of the activity, the feeling is not good. It's
Right.
usually on the other side of doing it when you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I'm not going to wait for the feeling, that we then can get some benefit from the given activity.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is sometimes when people are suffering with some of these conditions, there's almost like a over monitoring of their internal state. How do I
Mhm.
feel? How do I feel? How do I feel? Or rather than living.
Mm.
I whether I'm feeling good or I'm feeling bad, I'm in a marriage, and I need to show up. Whether I'm feeling good, whether I'm feeling bad, I've got kids and I've got responsibilities to them. Whether I feel good, whether I feel bad, I got work today. So there's a space where I can turn my attention to some of the responsibilities I have, and that can play a really important role with me
Mhm.
shifting from just this over monitoring of what's going on. There is a space for check-ins. Okay, well, how am I doing? All I'm saying is there can at times be a limit to how beneficial it is to over monitor how I'm feeling, rather than let me make my focus value delivery and delivering at a high level, so that it doesn't bring me down.
Mhm.
There are like, this is what I find just so amazing about the mind is it's not what happens, it's how you experience it. You know,
Mm.
it's it's
Mhm.
it's what you tell yourself about the experience. That's why
Mhm.
so much of psychotherapy is, how are you experiencing this event? What are you telling yourself?
Yes.
And cognitive behavioral therapy plays an important role in making sure there are not cognitive errors, so that those cognitive errors can at times contribute to things like depression. That's why
Right.
it can play such an important role. What were you going to say, sis?
I was going to say, just to piggyback on that thought, I definitely share with clients that we can't control what happens outside of us, meaning like we can't control other people. They may do or say things that we don't like or that make us upset or make us sad. But what we can control is how we respond to what's happening outside of us. And that can make all the difference in the world. So you might, have somebody say something that you don't like. Okay, so how am I going to respond? Do I have the perspective or the thought process that say that was a negative comment or a negative comment that somebody made? Am I going to allow that negative comment to implant into my mind and brain and accept that as truth? Or am I going to uproot that comment and let it or state the truth about what that negative comment is trying to do? And so just being aware of our thoughts and our perspective, not allowing what other people do to affect us, as it is, again, truth, or that it has to be what they're doing or saying. Because you can't control other people, but you can control how you think and how you receive things.
Yeah, like, so you're talking about like interrogating the
Yes.
thought process and making
Interrogating the
sure that
thought.
it all makes sense. You're actually investigating. You're like, is this
Mhm,
accurate? And so,
mhm.
yeah, CBT therapists can be super helpful with that.
And
Now,
training people how to do that in real time, because a lot of times we'll take a comment or take a thought or take somebody else's behavior and we'll hold on to it, but dismantling that thought, that in real time, it can make all the difference in the world.
right. And you said we can't control people, which I
Mhm.
agree with. You can't really control, but you can
Well, you can,
influence people. You
yeah,
can
and you can,
influence people. Go ahead. What
yes.
were you gonna
I was gonna say you can control your thoughts and your response to that, what
say?
other people do, so that you are not effective and become affected and become go into a depressive state over what somebody else is doing.
As you can see, we can live here for a second,
It-
because another important thing with depression and a number of the mental disorders is um, making sure we distinguish what we can control versus what we can't control,
That's right.
and directing mental energy and physical appropriately, accordingly. And then you can see sometimes we could use some support in doing that, and that's where
Right.
sometimes a therapist, a counselor, a coach can
Mhm.
come in. All right, now what were you going to say,
I
sis?
wanted to say one more thing to that, just because I think it's important for people to understand too, is like doing what I just said and what Dr. White just said. I know I share with clients all the time that basically this is an ongoing conversation inside your head and mind, like that's going on in real time. And I always say the healthiest minded people are those who talk to themselves or have this conversation with themselves, meaning a lot of times we think, oh, if you talk, somebody who's schizophrenic, okay, they're going to be talking to something that's invisible, that's not there, nothing real. So nothing like that, but having a conversation with yourself, to be able to dismantle these negative things that are coming into your head and mind that can cause depression, because you're starting to think a negative way about yourself or about a situation, and then you just kind of park yourself there and you just start getting more and more depressed. But having a conversation with yourself, telling yourself the positive things, or changing that perspective, can help change the way you think about something, and that's the most important thing.
Oh, well said.
Mm.
Well said. Now to Veronica's question. Veronica says, does depression and anxiety and panic attacks always go hand in hand? Let's see. Um, Seems to be my experience. So there is a pretty established co-occurrence, that there's often a co-occurrence with depression and anxiety. They can at times be comorbid. Now, you then mentioned specifically panic attacks.
Right,
Now, anxiety, that's more specific.
right.
And I do see depression, anxiety a lot of times going together. Specifically, panic attacks, now that's a little different. That doesn't always necessarily go with depression. A quick word on panic attacks, especially like genuine, clinically, like meeting the clinical criteria for panic attacks.
Right.
A few of the syndromal criteria are: you feel almost like you're going to die, or you're losing your mind, having trouble catching your breath, and
Feel like an
heart
elephant is sitting on
racing,
your chest.
not
Mhm.
breathing, feeling like you're dying in a sense,
Mhm.
um, coming out of nowhere. You can see how terrorizing this is. Like
Right.
in true panic disorder, like you don't even know the cause of it. You can't even identify a
No.
reason.
Mm-mm.
Um, and then and it usually being super intense and lasting about 15 minutes. So if it doesn't meet that criteria, it's usually something different. And a lot of times, if there's a specific precipitant, then now we're talking about sometimes a specific phobia or another condition. But true garden variety panic disorder was usually described as not having a specific
Mhm.
cause.
I was also gonna say, this, and I learned this from Dr. Nedley's work, is that, you know, there are studies that show that serotonin levels are not there's they're not balanced in the brain when panic attacks, when they're happening frequently. But what you did say about, and I think it's important to share with people, as you did, that a panic attack, can't last longer than 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, people think that they're going to die, and I think it's really important that people understand that. Well, a lot of times, if they don't know what's happening to them for the first time, then they're not going to even, they're going to think that something's happening and they're going to die. But if someone is having panic attacks and has a disorder and they're happening often, I think it's important that they be educated to know that this is, a panic attack can't last longer than 15 or 20 minutes. It reaches its peak and it starts to come down. So that what you shared was very important.
Yeah, typically speaking. Now, and also remember, when we're talking about a psychiatric disorder, that means the physical disorder has been ruled out.
Right.
So this is the reason why Veronica said, "Hey, she landed in the emergency room." Yeah, because you have to make sure there's not something else that's going on. So hopefully now
Right.
you know that it's the diagnosis of panic disorder, and you can kind of judge whether, okay, this is how it usually feels.
Yeah.
So you and your healthcare team can now make a decision about what should be the next steps. The other thing I always champion is, please don't wait for the emergency to put your healthcare team together. Do the best that you can to get your connections before it gets to crisis. So sometimes you start having questions that, hey, you know what? I wonder if I have this, or I wonder if I have that. It makes sense to find your team before the crisis, because you want that people are prioritizing you when you're in crisis, as opposed to, now it's time to start the relationship. And yeah, you got to do it now, but it's just, you might have had a better experience if you already had that team in place. So just an FYI on that. All
Yes.
right. Now we can actually come to, I think it was Denise that asked the
Denise.
question
Yeah, that
before.
was Denise.
She
Mhm.
talked about hormonal changes. And besides brain chemistry, one of the things that can lead to depression is, in fact, hormonal changes. But Denise, not just postpartum. It's suggested that puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, and menopause can at times be associated, can cause the hormonal shifts that at times can contribute to depression. And also one of the organs that you want to think about is the thyroid gland, which of
Mhm.
course produces thyroid hormone.
Mhm.
And so, when thyroid hormone is elevated, it increases your metabolic rate. It will increase the temperature set point in the body. And then when, of course, it's low, and of course, so when it's high, when thyroid hormone is high, it can push you more towards a condition that we call, manic. You feel like you're having racing thoughts, might be having trouble sleeping, might feel palpitations. But then when thyroid hormone is low, now you can feel more like depressed.
Mhm.
And so reduced metabolic rate, so now a greater likelihood of gaining weight, decreased energy, and more prone to depression. So, yeah, Denise, absolutely. Hormonal shifts can absolutely contribute to, uh, among other conditions, depression. This is why don't hesitate to get the help that you need, teasing these things out. It's like, that's why we're elaborating the numerous things that can be going on, and this is why it's so important for a professional healthcare professional to be able to tease out what might be happening with you as they go down their list of questions, and then develop a differential diagnosis and share with you, okay, well, this is how we're working through the differential diagnosis, the list of conditions we think you might be affected with. And then we're going to go through a process of tests, of history taking, to make sure we get at what is probably the right diagnosis for you. So it's a very complicated process, but
Mhm.
when done right, it gets to the right condition so that we can then get to the right solution. All right. All right. So we mentioned hormonal changes. The other thing is actually, yeah, there can be medical conditions that can be associated with depression. Now, an interesting thing you want to be aware of, um, as we talk about medical conditions, is when depression co-occurs with something like diabetes, for example, mortality actually goes up.
Mm.
So depression is nothing you really want to like neglect appropriate treatment of, because depression and diabetes, depression co-occurring with heart disease, it actually increases mortality in those conditions.
Mhm.
But yeah, there are definitely chronic illnesses, chronic pain, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, that can be associated with an increased risk of depression occurring. It can be quite a hit coming down with a medical condition. You
I
know,
was just gonna
as
say that.
young people, we feel young people. Can we still say we're young, Sister Tante?
I mean,
You
I
know,
don't.
we're gonna claim it.
I feel young, and
We're gonna claim it.
I feel
But
young, but yeah,
as young
we're
people,
not young people though. My children are
you feel invincible, and
young.
you feel like, hey, I don't need the primary care provider. I don't, I'm good. And then you come down with that first condition.
And then,
And for
you
some people, it can be something like substantial, like a heart attack or something. And it's like it's just like life tapping on your shoulder, letting you know you are not as invincible as you
right,
think.
right.
And that can be a real blow to the psyche. It can be like, man, you talk about some conditions where some people, for example, they may have a colostomy bag or something like that, or it's like
Mhm,
it's like these are things that can really affect the psyche. It's like, oh, how I feel so uncomfortable with this, to put it
mhm.
mildly. So there's a whole dynamic with chronic illness
Right.
that can be associated with depression. It's like you feel like I've lost an aspect of myself. I can't do what I used to be able to do. And so I bring that up not to like magnify the stigma, but to motivate you to get the additional support that you need.
Mhm.
Because really and truly, you are not alone. You're not alone in experiencing it that way. But sometimes the shame can kind of muzzle you to where you don't say anything. And
Mhm.
you really feel this sense that, well, I'm experiencing this condition. I don't really want to talk about it. When in fact, there are other people who are experiencing that. And if you get the additional support that you need, you would probably fare even better because
Mhm.
your mentality has a profound impact on how you recover from the illness even.
Mhm.
So this is not something trivial that we're talking about. Um, yeah, what were you going to say, Sister
I
Tante?
was just gonna say, like, if you've been diagnosed with a chronic disease, definitely reach out to a mental health professional. Just to help you to have a healthy perspective as you're going through the journey and treatment, especially for cancer. There are
Mm.
so many ups and downs with cancer, and so many things that happen. But that's not the only disease. There's other diseases that, like Dr. White said, you're losing a part of yourself. You feel like you're losing a part of yourself, and that a therapist can help you walk through that. There are therapists who specialize in helping people with chronic disease. And so definitely reach
I have
out
a
to them.
I have a friend who is an oncologist,
Mhm.
and she alerted me to something incredibly disturbing.
Hmm.
She said there is an increased incidence of domestic violence with the diagnosis of cancer. Can you believe that?
I didn't know those numbers. Yeah, wow.
Can you
That's
believe that?
awful.
Like I was just aghast. Now I'm no oncologist, so that's not my area. And
Right.
she's a pretty significant, expert in the area. So I don't have any reason to doubt her, but it was just something really alarming.
Right.
But it's the ultimate
Yeah.
example that here, when you are the most vulnerable, here
Right.
you
That's
are.
horrible.
It's really horrible. But the idea just being reach out, get the support that you
Mhm.
need. Because it's in moments of vulnerability where sometimes the very support you think you would be getting, you're not getting it, you know.
Yeah, you should be getting more love and more support from family members, especially from a spouse, a significant other, at that time, not stressing you out, and trying to harm you. That's horrible.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people be like would be prepared to say, I'm a witness to that, or I've experienced that. All
Mhm.
right. I just want to make sure we're not missing any comments. I'm sure Amber's
No,
doing her job.
yeah, she say to our friend Bella, she's appreciating this conversation about depression. She says
Absolutely.
because most people in the whole world, she says, struggle with depression. So yes, you're right.
Well, well
It's
said.
not.
No,
It's definitely
no,
not
well
just
said.
here in America. It's definitely that human beings. But thank you for
Well
watching
said.
all the way from Africa.
Now that brings us now to the psychological factors. So there being psychological factors that will contribute to depression. One of them being personality.
Hmm.
So there are people who have personality traits, for example, low self-esteem, a tendency to pessimism, being highly self-critical. These are some of the personality traits that can increase that risk of depression. And so the counter to that is, folk, remember to love yourself. Remember to be kind to yourself. Um,
Hmm.
I think, we can do so much damage and harm.
Hmm.
And so much of it is the self-talk.
It's
Like,
the
yeah,
negative self-talk.
one of the things that CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy, aims to do is help you be aware of what it is that you're thinking.
Right.
And this is why, like, writing can be so important, because
Hmm.
it's important for you to see on paper, getting it kind of externalizing it so that you can see what you're thinking, so you can interrogate it.
Yes. Put it
And,
on. I like to tell people, put it on trial. Put it on the
and
put it on trial. Put it in
treat
the
it like a hostile witness. You have
yes,
permission, to treat it like
definitely.
a hostile witness. Put it on trial. Interrogate it. Is it factual, or is it shrouded by bias? And what's not actually true. And so yeah, there are personality types that can actually
Yes.
increase the risk of depression. Were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say, too, when you said put it on paper, I like to encourage people who who are, pessimists or think that way, seem to always thinking negative, to start a gratitude journal. Like think of one, and it starts low. Think of one thing you can be thankful for, have gratitude for a day. Just one. I mean, if you can do more, that's always great. But just start with one, because there was a study that was done where they took two separate groups of depressed people, and the study they put one group on antidepressants and one did 31 days of gratitude journal, and so they had very high numbers did the gratitude. Say that antidepressants are not needed in some situations, and a lot of situations they are, but it also shows that gratitude, or being thankful and showing that gratitude, can have a positive effect as well. It also showed that there's other studies that show that when we show gratitude to ourselves and to others, there is a dopamine release when that happens as well. And that showing gratitude to yourself, I think it's strange for some people to hear show gratitude to yourself, but you need to, like we're talking about the negative thought process that happens, the negative comments, I should say, rather, that we are so quick, and that's always right there in our head to say something negative to ourselves, but we don't. But to say, be
Right.
thankful about something to ourselves, we're not so quick to do that. And we need to show love to ourselves, because God loves.
I You kind of froze a little bit, sis. Yeah, but
Okay.
like
That,
I've tried to become a gratitude master. And here's
talk
what I
about
mean
that.
by that. Like I've tried to say, okay, from the time my eyes open, what am I grateful for? Well, the minute you wake up, your eyes are working, right? Your ears are working.
Amen.
But here's, like, can I just tell you something really interesting? The number of people that have made a contribution to your life by the time you walk downstairs and have a cup of tea, because we're moving away from coffee, let's say, and just have some herbal tea, just the amount, like, the people that built the house, the people that have the blanket and that got it delivered to you, the reason the temperature in the home is functioning, the
Mhm,
pajamas you're wearing, like the
mhm.
number of people that contributed, like the number of people that have contributed to allow us to have this program right now.
Right.
Like, there is so much to be grateful for. It's I think it's an interesting experience when you pause to even begin the exercise. I remember doing this one time when I was traveling across country, and I'm just like, I wouldn't be surprised if 1 million people did not contribute to allowing me to have this experience. And
Mhm.
I'm sure it was probably even more than 1 million. Like when you really think about what it takes for you to do some of the simple things you don't think about, the people who worked on the roads, the people maintaining it, the electricity, the people who worked on the car and delivered that car to you. Like there are so many contributions you have to look past in order to just kind of remain in a state of pessimism. You have to
Right.
look past those contributions. And I'm
Mhm.
saying going forward, you get a chance to shift that. You get a
Mm.
chance to say, I want to do a better job taking note of the contributions that are making my life easier. And I want to be grateful for it. I don't
Right.
I don't want to be immune to it. So just a thought.
I want to take Veronica's question, but I just want to
Yeah.
talk about this comment that Deborah put in here. She said, "Sometimes I personally struggle with focusing on myself because I'm hearing so much in our churches that we should love others. I can't strike the balance." Mrs. Myers is okay. She said that she agreed with what I said, but um, Deborah, it's interesting that you put that. The reason I wanted to highlight your comment is because I feel like every I mentioned show attitude and love, and I hear that what you just said, how you feel in the Christian community, they'll say, "Oh, but isn't that being selfish?" No, having a balance. Of course, meaning is that a Christian principle? Yes, it is a Christian principle to love yourself and I always tell people, pour into yourself so that you can be the best version of yourself. And then you will effectively pour into others, to your family, to your spouse, to your children, and to others outside in the world when you pour into yourself and taking care of your own mental health, making sure you're thinking godly thoughts about yourself, you can then just shine out in the world and help and take care of other people as God leads you to do so. So thank you
Sister
for that
Sister
comment.
Sister Atonte and I have a good friend, Dr. Columbus Batiste. You of course know his wife, you
Batiste.
know. And
Yeah.
uh, Dr. Batiste recently wrote a book entitled "Selfish." Be more
Yeah, he did.
selfish, and it's a very interesting
Yeah.
acronym, but where
Mhm.
ultimately it's really championing taking better care of
Mhm.
yourself. I don't know
Right.
the acronym. Sorry, Dr. Batiste. I don't, but yeah, you can find it. You can find it on
On
Amazon and probably
Amazon.
wherever books are sold.
Right.
But it deals with some of this issue of it is so important that we take time to nurture one of our most important relationships, and that is the relationship with yourself.
Right.
So much of mental illness comes from a faulty foundation of flawed relationship with yourself.
Mhm.
So yes, there can be an over focus on self, but there can also be a neglect of self. And that's, yeah, you do want to work
Yes.
on striking that balance to make sure
Right.
that you do not neglect yourself, because
Right.
adequate attention to yourself positions you to deliver at a higher level of quality to others.
Mhm.
And when you
Yeah.
neglect yourself, it can often interfere with the quality of your product. Or even if it's high quality for this moment, you're on track to kind of burn yourself out because you're neglecting self.
Right.
So,
And I think the
so
neglect
this
is
is
more
very important.
common. I think neglect is more common than those who love themselves too much, even though there's definitely that problem out there too. But I think we do.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to Veronica's question because I think this is good. Can you address how partners and family are dealing with depression? She's saying that they say we can just snap out of it.
Oh,
You
um,
you definitely don't
it.
say that. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness, man. Oh my goodness. We wouldn't want to do that. You know, let me put it, I think I've talked about this before, that I remember on an Instagram post, there was a young lady and she was lying in the driveway face up and it was raining.
Mm.
And the mother pulls up the van, doesn't run over her, but she pulls up the van, gets out of the van, and lies down next to the young lady. And basically, she gets into her experience with her. And that really being the ultimate example of empathy. Okay, guys, we're not championing that you go out there and get sick.
No.
Please, please, let's use common sense.
Right.
But it if you're trying to get a picture of what empathy looks like, that's a picture of empathy, right? Again, please use common sense and don't take this to the wrong extreme. So the idea is when you're going to support someone, you got to read about it. And
Mhm.
nowadays, like I love how technology is really evolving. Because Atante, back in our day, they had Google. Google was just coming into its. I can still remember when I was a medical student and I asked him a question, the resident that I was working with, and he's like, "Let's go to a website called google.com." It's the funniest thing. And then the question. So now today it's not Google, it's Chat GPT. So like
Oh,
as far as family members learning about the condition, just pop it in the chat, ask your questions. It's like chat,
right.
you don't even have to you don't have to ask the perfect question. You just to the best of your idea, the best of your ability, put that in there, and you'd be surprised at the helpful information you can get on the issue. But what I'm championing is, Veronica, they got to kind of, on some level, be interested in getting into that experience with you, at least learning about it, understanding it, or even coming to you and saying, hey guys, do you have any question for me about what this condition is like? Before you give a recommendation. I can't tell you how long at times we interview a patient and do the assessment before we make any recommendations. And it's a
Mhm.
good model for life. Before we make recommendations, wouldn't it be a good idea to make sure we understand what the person's experiencing?
Mhm.
So if we wanted to support a person, let's ask a lot of questions. Let's take some time to really understand their situation, because it's a much greater likelihood they're going to take seriously what we say if we've taken the time to hear and understand what they're saying, understand their experience.
Right. Right. I just want to say
Yeah.
before we go to, I we will be this last and final question on up there, but um, just circling back to what you were saying, I think what Veronica would, or I think it was Veronica who asked that last question, about family and love our friends who just say, "Oh, you can snap out of it," or they just think like, "Oh, your depression is just whatever," and maybe they don't even think it's depression. That can, a lot of times in certain cultures, that can be, mental health things are not really respected or taken seriously. And so that can be so dangerous, especially with our children. And I think it's more so, with young people, if they don't want to respect, like here in America, that's and because we have viewership around the world, I let that in some they don't take anxiety or depression as a real thing, and that they're just being weak or just not dealing with things. I can even remember my dad, he used to always say, and God bless his soul, he's resting in Jesus now, but he would always say, "Oh, just suck it up," meaning like just deal with it, and and that was just the way that he, thought that, because that's the way he dealt with things, right? He didn't really, there was nothing, he would never even consider, especially growing up or even in my childhood, really to say like, "Oh, go to let's see if you need to go to a therapist," or that was just in a lot of cultures, that is just not the common go-to for parents. And so even in some cultures in adult life either. So now things are definitely, I have to say, because Hollywood promotes mental health, different places do. That's great. But for so many growing up and in their cultures, it wasn't a prominent thing. So I'm just saying that we really need to be sensitive, especially to our young people and our spouses, and it was just with our friends and family members to really take their if they're if they're going through some depression or even anxiety, we need to take it seriously and be gentle and be very gentle.
On a lighter note, Sister Tante, I
Mhm.
remember going back to visit my old neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. And I remember my brother and I were like, this is where the emergency room is? Oh my goodness. Like, we didn't even know where the hospital was
Oh,
because you were not getting taken to a hospital unless you broke something. So,
okay,
like,
right.
we definitely grew up in a setting where things needed to be pretty desperate in order for you to kind of get medical care. But that said, the flip to that is you can't really force your family to give you necessarily the support that you feel you need. Like, that's not going to
It's
happen.
true.
It's not
It's
always going to
true.
happen. Like, however much we want it. And so what we back to the control what I can control. I can't always control a person to respond to me in a certain way. But what I am responsible for is obtaining support.
Right.
So just because it can't come from family, it
You
doesn't
can.
mean I can't go somewhere else. I can't get
Right.
professional mental health support. And sometimes part of that support might even better advise you on how to enroll family. But the idea just being,
Right.
if it's clear to you that that's not a good source of support, then it does behoove you to get the support from another setting, often a professional setting, because you don't want to fall victim to, okay, well, let me go to this source and that source is tainted for whatever reason, rather than no, get the support that you absolutely need.
Right.
Okay, now
Our
Ashley
final
Owen.
final question.
Yeah, this is, we're going out with a bang with Ashley Owens. Ashley, thank you for this question. How do you get a spouse to admit depression? It's so obvious to me, but they keep denying it, and nothing will get better if they don't identify the problem so we can work on a solution. And Ashley, I'm sure you're asking for a friend. Um, so, uh, so basically, what jumped into my mind when I saw that question is one of the things we mentioned depression does is it impairs with function. And
Mm.
while a person may not be prepared to say, well, I think I'm depressed, what the way the conversation might start is, honey, there's been a change in your level of functioning. You're making more mistakes, or you're definitely more withdrawn, or like, okay, this is at least what I'm seeing. Um, Maybe you could tell me what's going on from your perspective. So
Right.
actually, this goes back to the importance of asking questions rather than going in there with, hey, this is what I think is going on. Because keep in
Right.
mind, the diagnosis of depression um, comes after a physical workup that has excluded medical issues. But as far as broaching the topic, it might be worth just saying, okay, I've noticed this change. You're not hanging out with your friends anymore.
Right.
I notice, you're going into work a lot later. You're not maintaining your hygiene the way you normally do, or these are the things I'm noticing, but I don't want to jump to any conclusions. Maybe you could tell me what do you think is going on? How are you doing? Sometimes we don't ask questions, and sometimes we don't give a person an opportunity to kind of explain their perspective, as opposed to me going in saying, Sister Tante, I think that's a purple shirt you're wearing. She's gonna be
Mhm.
like, that this is not even a shirt. What are you talking about? Yeah, it definitely looks like a purple shirt.
Right.
And we're off to the races. And rather than that, it's okay, well, what are you wearing? Um, and so I think that's a better, I think questions and checking in and kind of getting at what they think is going on.
Right.
um, and then they might be vulnerable with you and say, well, it's not depression, but I'm definitely frustrated with this cluster of things that's going on.
Right. That
um,
your example is perfect. I mean, it really is perfect on a way a spouse or a family member can approach someone. I mean, it's an easy startup. Usually we talk about that in marriage, but it's an easy startup. The way you addressed at what a spouse can say, I can see someone just feeling the empathy and the love and just kind of be like you said, um, this is what I'm going through, or this is what I'm feeling, and just start a conversation. But don't get mad at them.
Right there.
Don't yell at, don't tell them like, oh, they're not doing, in a, don't get mad
Because
at them and say things like, you're not doing the things you're supposed to do. You're sleeping all the time. All of this stuff. Yeah.
because there still exists a very powerful stigma connected to mental illness.
Right.
And people do not want you throwing that label on them, that's for sure.
Right.
So they're probably going to have a much easier time explaining what they think is going on, and you approaching them from the standpoint of, obviously, I love you, I'm your number one cheerleader. Hey, I'm seeing the following things. Maybe you could share from your perspective what's been going on. Like, and if you approach it from that standpoint, rather than launching in with, I think you're depressed. Oh my goodness. That's like explosive. It's
Yeah.
like, me? I ain't depressed.
Yeah.
Blah, blah,
It
blah.
can't
How dare
be.
you? No, you're depressed, and oh my goodness, we're off to the races.
Right.
Now, actually,
No,
I
most
know you didn't do
definitely.
that.
You know what?
Again, and I know it's for your friend. So just let your friend know, hey, this is how you might want to approach it.
Right. We're out of time, but I definitely see a part 2, if not a part 3 to this, because we
Yeah,
only got through half, or a little, not
absolutely.
even half of the material. And also, I think we could talk about some of the things that, as we're moving forward, we're just having real
Yeah,
talk here, Dr. White, but like some solutions that, that people can do, not solutions per se, but helpful tools that you can do that can help with depression. So we're going to talk about that as we
absolutely.
continue forward topic. So please
Thank you
share
for
this
being
link on
yes,
your, yes, thank you for being here this evening. Please share this on your social media. Everybody can benefit from the conversation that we've had this evening, and come back next week, 'cause we'll definitely be here for a part 2, and invite your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, everybody,
you
everybody
guys
that you
take care. And
know.
Sister
Yes.
Tanya, have a wonderful week.
Yes, you too, Dr. White. Okay, see you guys next week. Have a
All
good
right,
evening.
take care. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.